Okay, we're going to cover the final exam practical, and if I get stuck somewhere, you guys help me out, but I'm going to try to do my best here. So the first thing we have to do on the instructions, we have 10 minutes. We're going to set the master section for a recording. So I usually put my brain in tracking mode. So the first thing I think of is we're going to go into mic mode. That's just kind of the first thing I think of. I'm recording, so I'm going to be in mic mode, which switches all of the inputs to microphones as opposed to mixing right down here. Okay, so we got that. All right, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to choose internal. I'm just kind of going to go down the rows here and make sure I'm on mix 1 and 2. Internal mix 1 and 2, if you can scroll down here, makes me listen to this mix 1 and 2 fader. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that up because that made my brain think I needed to turn it up. If there's any cuts on, I'm going to take the cuts off, okay? At this point, I'm going to both meter, and if you come down here, meter and listen here in the control room on OP. That's before Pro Tools, right? I'll go ahead and tell you the monitors to use, but most likely it'll be the JBLs. We'll hit that. I'm just kind of moving down. We're going to also meter mix 1 and 2 up there on those meters up on the console when we get a signal. We're going to go ahead and send channel safe and monitor safe since we're tracking. That way we can solo things and it won't affect the cues, both on the tracking and the channel side. Okay, we don't really need solos right now, and if these cuts are on, we're going to take those cuts off. Okay, the next thing I'm probably going to do is go ahead and just turn that up just a little bit. And anything I'm forgetting, guys, that you can help me with here? I think we got most of everything else. Okay, so let's go ahead and master section's done. Let's go overhead and move. And now our pretend microphone is plugged in on 13, okay, out there in the studio. So first thing I'm thinking in my brain is to go ahead and assign this to the master bus, mix 1 and 2 by hitting 1 and 2 there. I'll go ahead and turn up the fader while I'm here. And then I also want to make sure that the monitors are getting their signal, so I can turn up the monitor. But while I'm here, I'm going to just I'm going to send this to 1 and 2, AUX 1 and 2 too, because I'm probably, oops, well that one doesn't work anyway. Well, let's use AUX 3 and 4 then, okay, because I'm going to need to monitor from that monitor path later on in the practical. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is go ahead and gain my signal. But honestly, even before I do that, I'm just going to move up the channel strip, and hit direct there, and then go ahead and gain my signal on 13. Ah, that is very sensitive. Okay, now, so I'm shooting for 0 dB on the meters there, and if I can go ahead and turn the level down because I want to be able to think. Can we see Pro Tools to make sure we're getting a signal there on Pro Tools? What is it? Can you change the input there for me, if you don't mind, to 13? Forgot to do that. There you go. This will be already done for you, and let me go ahead and while she's doing that, let me go ahead and show you this patch right over here. This patch will already be made, so just leave it in place. That's what gets the iPod to actually play through, but this patch will be made when you come in. So go back up to Pro Tools there, and you can see that we have signal, or we had signal on Pro Tools, and it looked pretty good, right? So now, again, let's just talk about the theory. There's 2 things that are getting it to Pro Tools, which are the gain knob and this fader. So we kind of want to make sure that that fader's sitting around 0. Okay, and then our monitor level in here again is this right here, the blue fader. All right, so on the practical instructions, I think the next thing, if you can flip back to the practical instructions, the next thing we need to do is get stereo Q mix going. Okay, so I'm going to just stay here on the channel, and I'm going to go ahead and start to, oh, we did AUX 3 and 4, didn't we? Because that button was broken. But most likely, in this practical, we're actually going to do, I got to make sure I'm pushing the right buttons. 3 and 4, yeah. So I hit 3 and 4, so these two will be paired together, okay? I may do 1 and 2, depending on what channel we use. I'm going to make sure that pre is pushed down, yeah? So now I'm going to turn these both up to about 12 o'clock. 1 is the pan. Okay, so the blue one is the pan, and the gray one is the level. All right, so that's just the local one. Now I'm going to move to the master section, and you could also do this when you're setting up the master section. I'm just doing it this way so it makes sense. So I turned on the local aux send, but now I'm doing, sorry, aux 3 and 4 this time. And I'm going to turn both of those to about 12 o'clock. Okay. And then finally, it's not done yet, we have to tell Q1 mix up here where to get its signal from. So make sure you hit aux 1 and 2 here instead of 1 and 2. A lot of people just hit 1 and 2. That means you're listening to whatever's coming out of the master fader 1 and 2. We don't want that. We want aux 1 and 2. Okay, and then over here, Q level. Make sure we're on Q1 because that's what we push down. Oh, and one other thing I forgot to do, sorry, on Q1 is turn it on. That would help. Okay, so I'm going to listen on headphones now and see if I got a signal. Oh, and by the way, this song was recorded in this same studio we are sitting here today. Okay. And I'm going to turn my level up just a little bit more. Okay. Let's see. I'm hearing something that's fairly low, so what I'm going to do is come back over here, boost my levels a little bit more. Okay. Okay. Oops, didn't mean to do the pan. That's the pan. That's the level. Okay. All right, so we're good to go. The only other thing I might ask you here is to pan it to the right and left. So the way you're going to do that is just pan it to the right speaker or left speaker of the headphones. Okay, so cool. So now at this point in the practical, we've done what we need to do for tracking, and there's some optional items that we might do. Okay, so go ahead and scroll down to the bottom there. Okay, so the first option, option A, that you may be asked to do, I'm going to go ahead and dim it so we can hear me talk. The first option that you might have is, it says cross patch, but since we're using a source, I may ask you to use the multi-track matrix. So right now we're coming in on 13, but I may ask you to record it on Pro Tools on 15. Okay, so go ahead and put our input on 15 now in Pro Tools. Yeah, there you go. So 15. So we're still coming in 13, and then the output 15, if you don't mind. And I'll go ahead and I will do those changes for you if it's on the practical. Okay, so the question is, how do we get it there to Pro Tools on 15? That's the first thing we got to do, is get it to Pro Tools. Okay, so what I'm going to do, instead of using direct here, instead of using direct, I'm going to turn direct off, and I'm going to go up here to the multi-track matrix and hit 1 through 24. Thankfully that works. Okay, and I hit 15 there, 15/39, so I'm sending it to 15, and that is on. Okay, so we have signal on Pro Tools. Go ahead and show our signal on Pro Tools. We do, and it looks good, right? Because technically that's a signal we just established. But now we have to ask ourselves, where's it coming back after Pro Tools? And the answer is the output. And show us that again, Sarah. On the output is A line 15. So one more time on the console. No longer is it coming back to this monitor here. We got to turn that down, turn it off. And now it's coming back on 15 right here, okay? So we're going to do the exact same things on 15, okay? And that's going to be listening back to it, and then, you know, you would do your same setup for the aux sins, etc., on that. Okay, cool. So that's really that. So that's kind of the bus matrix part of it. All right, go back and show the instructions. So the next thing I may ask you to do is option C. We can't really do option B because we don't really have any outboard mic preamps. So the next thing, let's go ahead and grab our virtual microphones here. I will have an actual pair of microphones in the studio, and I'll have probably pencil microphones, which these are supposed to be replicating, and I'll also have larger, probably ribbon mics that are bidirectional. So I will ask you to show me one of the following 6 techniques, which is XY, spaced pair, ORTF, NOS, Blumline, and what else? Am I forgetting one? What now?
That's it.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, that was 5 actually. Okay, so let's start with the easy ones. So spaced pair, if these are the capsules right here. Spaced pair, I'm recording my headphones. Spaced pair, would be like that, okay? And technically, we should follow the 3-to-1 ratio. So one from the sound source, 3 apart, right? Okay, and next pattern is going to be XY. And what you'll notice about XY is that the capsules are not touching, but they're pretty darn close to minimize any phase anomalies. And this can have variations. It can go, I think, all the way from like, I don't know, 90 degrees to like 130, but in general, somewhere around there would be XY. Now let's talk about the freakier ones, okay? So these are the NOS and the ORTF, okay? So the ORTF is now, instead of the capsules being next to each other, they're far apart. So these are the capsules, and I think it's supposed to be about 130 degrees on the ORTF, so you would just show me that with the microphones. You don't even need to put them on stands. And the NOS, the big difference between the NOS is that the NOS, the bases of the mics are actually kind of far apart. And that's supposed to be 90 degrees as well. So all are variations, but we would call these near coincident because the capsules aren't touching, and the XY we would call coincident, okay? And finally, Blum line, which would be, if I had 2 bidirectional mics, if they picked up sound on each side, I would basically put them in an X, one on top of another, not touching, but so you would have one microphone that accepts sound from that side and that side, crossed with another microphone that would accept sound from the back and the front. So you would just show me those microphone techniques. Okay, so those are the options that I could pick. I only will pick one from that list. But at this point, we need to go ahead and put our brain in mixing mode. So this is kind of part 2 of the 10-minute practical. I personally, this is up to you, would solo the board. I mean, not solo it, normal it, or just kind of zero everything out, however you want to describe it. So I'm just going to take everything off so it doesn't get me in trouble for the second part. Okay, so don't have any buttons pushed. I don't know why that light's still on, but that I don't want pushed, bringing signal through. Yeah, help me out here. Help me out, filmer. Okay, and gonna just honestly, I mean, in my brain, I just like to get rid of all this just to make sure I'm working on a clear palette here. Okay, close enough for horseshoes and hand grenades. All right, so, all right, never heard that one? All right, so, starting again, my brain is like, what am I doing now? I'm mixing, right? So I'm going to hit the mix button this time. Okay, mix. And we already have a pre-recorded on Pro Tools kick drum and snare drum. And while we're waiting here, can you set those to output 13, 14 for me? Okay, so mix. We're not going to hear it on Pro Tools, after Pro Tools, unless we are in PB at this time, right? Because PB is after Pro Tools playback, and then down here on the multitrack monitors, playback. Don't need to do channel safe or monitor safe, okay? It's not going to affect anything since it's already recorded. All right, we want to make sure we're still listening to internal mix 1 and 2. So mix 1 and 2 is up here. Choose our speakers, probably the JBLs, unless I tell you otherwise, the NS10s. Okay, so JBLs are small. Looking good here, okay. We can cut our program, our nice Christmas program music, so we're not getting a clash of sounds, which I could honestly do with pulling the patch here. I'll just go ahead and pull this patch. There we go. All right, make life easier. All right, now, so can you go ahead and play that for us, Sarah? And we're going to go into 1 and 2. I need to go ahead and assign those to the stereo master bus, and I already have level. So the one thing the practical instructions say is we want to make sure that we have this, you know, a nominal level here. So if I look up at the meter, I could probably honestly get that kick drum up just a little bit more, and I'm doing that by just, we could also use the line gain if we needed to, okay, because I don't want these faders to be at the very top. Okay, cool. Okay, so now I'm supposed to get a mix between those two. Okay, looking good. I'm also observing my mix 1 and 2 faders, but those are a little hot. So, I'm wondering why I'm having a discrepancy between that and the mix 1 and 2 faders. So one thing I would ask myself is, what am I metering here? I'm metering VU. I could also meter peak. But I'm honestly going to take that move back, to tell you the truth. I'm going to take this move back, because it's going to make that a little bit more average at 0. So even though it was lower on those meters, because it's hitting about 0 on those meters, I'm not going to worry about it. All right, so we wanted to get a nominal level. All right, so now can you go back to the practical instructions? So I think that's really, at this point, everything that we needed to do, except we also need to patch it to Pro Tools to get it to record in Pro Tools, our mix, and also to go ahead and hear it after Pro Tools, if that makes any sense. So what I'm going to do here is go over to our handy dandy patch bay, and I'm going to choose our mix output right here. It's in the middle, and it's yellow. So this is mix 1 and 2, which is the fader. If you just go over there, again, the fader that we have up here. So we're coming out of that, okay? And we're going to go to the multi-track. So that's going to be multi-track send. In our class, we use 2324. And is that inputted on the very bottom of Pro Tools there? Can you go scroll down for me on Pro Tools? Yeah, so we got a nice little signal. And if we got a good level over here, we shouldn't necessarily be clipping in Pro Tools. And we are clipping just a hair. That's strange though. Overall, that's showing a average that's not clipping, but if you somehow want to tweak that a little bit, you could just bump that down just a hair. Okay, all right, so now we're able to record our mix in Pro Tools, but we're still not listening to it after Pro Tools. So if we want to listen to it after Pro Tools, we're going to go multi-track return, and you can just either loop that for me or start it over. Multi-track return 20. Ooh, same patch cable. That's smart. Okay. 2324. 2324, and then we're going to bring it back into, let's just do PB1. Okay, and so in order to now listen before and after Pro Tools, make sure that you're on playback 1 here, okay, on this row. So that's after Pro Tools, that's before Pro Tools, so you just show me that. Okay, so I'll leave it, what do I want to leave it? Let's leave it after Pro Tools, why not? So at this point there's optional tasks, so go ahead and scroll over on the instructions there, and we'll go through each optional task. So the first optional task is to patch the Demeter spring reverb using the aux send and return specified by the instructor. Okay, all right, so if the reverb up here, or excuse me, over here, I'm sorry, reverb over here is turned on, hopefully it should be, but if it's not, just pay attention that right here it's turned on. Okay, all right, good. And so next step is we need to go ahead and put reverb, and I'm going to probably ask you to do that on the snare drum so you can get close to the patch bay here. So right now our snare drum is on 14. You can see right here, it's not labeled, but hopefully I'll label in the practical. Actually, yeah, let's do a different color because I'll go into green for the Christmas theme. Oh, red and green. Oh, yeah. Now I'm just going to move these patch cables just so they're right in front of me. Okay, so I'm going to do insert send. What do we say, 14? Okay, so insert send 14. Oh, no, I'm not. What am I doing? Okay, we're doing the reverb, aren't we? Sorry, my bad. Aux send. There we go. Aux send 1. Okay, we can just use aux send 1. Or is that the one that didn't work? I can't remember now, but that's all right. We'll use aux send 1. Welcome to our Neve. We'll see if it works. All right, so aux send 1 to outboard. Do we have that memorized?
I think it's 21.
21? Okay.
I think.
Outboard input 21. Well, we'll see if it's not. Okay, outboard input 21 because that's the spring reverb. And then coming back, I wanted to go green. Come on now, Christmas. All right, 21. And then we got to choose a line input. I'm just going to go ahead and choose 22, okay? So I'm going to do line input 22. It's up to you what you want to choose, but you'll see that this is line input, and it's line input because we're in mix mode. Otherwise, it'd be microphone input, but since we're in mix mode, it's going to be line input 22, okay? So then what I have to do is come over here on the console, at least this is what my brain is thinking, and turn up 22 and assign that to the master bus. Did you get that? Master bus and 22. I'll just leave it at 0. Okay, but I still haven't sent the actual snare drum to the aux send, okay? So on 14, I'm going to go ahead and way up here where the blue and gray buttons are, I'm going to hit on and turn up that level to a healthy amount. It's always better on reverb, just kind of turn it up to a healthy amount. But all I need to do on this case is just 1, since I'm not using it stereo. I just hit 1 on, okay? And then my brain over here is going to say turn the master on up here. So aux master, and just 1 again. And that's it. So everything else was set up correctly. So it's really 3 steps. It's setting the aux send on the actual local channel, doing the global one, and then getting the return back here. Okay, so that was the limiter reverb. All right, so I will go ahead and turn that off. So that's one option I may ask you. The second option is the tape echo, which we will not do this time around. Too much mechanical things to worry about on that. So let's move to option F. I could ask you that. Patch a DBX 160 VU. So this is basically exactly what we did on the last practical. So let's pick another color. Let's pick blue this time. So honestly, just so our brains aren't just completely shredded, let's just pull the patch for the reverb too. Okay, so on this one, I'm going to have you compress the kick drum. So the kick drum is 13, so I'm going to do insert send 13 to outboard input right here. The DBX 160 11. I'm just using the left side. You could use the other one. Okay, so I'm going to send that to 11. Always make sure that you hit the input on the bottom, and then these things get messed up, so make sure your patch cables are really pushed down in there. And then we're returning outboard processor out to insert return. Now, 2 things on the actual channel itself. You have to remember, so remember 13's kick drum, you have to remember 2 things, okay? You have to remember that up here, just follow my finger on this big long line, we have to have insert turned on if we want to hear it. It'll actually still go through the insert, but if we want to monitor it, we're going to hit insert. And then I'm going to ask you to do it pre-EQ, so you're going to hit that button too. So I want it pre-EQ because I want to be able to EQ after the compressor. So now I'm going to move over to the compressor, and we're going to do exactly what we did. And you can scoot over there, Braden, a little bit just to get the settings on this. So we're going to do exactly what we did on the practical exam. Okay, so I'm going to monitor input. You'll notice my input's pretty good. It's hitting right at 0, so I'm not going to change that too much. I'm going to set my compression ratio like it says in the instructions, 3:1, okay? And then I'm going to monitor the gain change instead of monitoring the input. So now you'll see the gain change is turning it down about 20 dB or 25 dB. So we only want about 5 dB, so I'm going to mess with the threshold until, okay, close enough, right? And then I'm going to hit the output, and it's still just a little low, so I'm going to do the output gain back to 0, okay? And did I turn down the monitor, or did I dim it? Oh, are we playing it?
You undid the bus.
Yeah, you undid the stereo buses and stuff for the...
Okay, thank you. There we go. So in the case of the kick, if I wanted to hear it without the insert and with the insert, I won't ask you that on the practical, but it's an easy way to A/B it without the insert. Okay, so that was option F. Option G, use the onboard equalizer to change the sound of a channel. Most likely I'll ask you to do the snare drum because that is our nice little culprit with resonance a lot of the times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put myself actually on, I'll just do latch is fine. I'm just going to solo the snare so it's easier for me to EQ it. And I'm going to turn it up. So resonance in the mid-range, so EQ, this section right here. So lows, low mids, upper mids, highs. So I'm probably going to start honestly with low mids. So I'm going to turn on the EQ. This is the snare actually. Right there. I'll turn those off just to snare. So I turn the EQ on. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to set a Q value maybe around there. So that's my Q. And then I'm going to boost a lot and find an offending frequency now using this third knob to see what I don't like. Oops, wrong knob. That's the one problem with this console is that most likely I'm looking for something that's not the best, but I'm just making sure that's our... Okay, so I saw somewhere there in the lows, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to widen out the Q just a little bit, and then dip. Okay, it's a little thin, so I might still tweak it. But overall now I have an EQ'd snare, and before EQ, after EQ, right? I'm not even hearing a difference. Are you?
Not really.
Okay, well, let's do a major move. There we go. Yeah, okay, so the EQ's there. I thought I did something, and then, I didn't dip it too much on that.
No.
There we go, okay. So anyway, it's there. It's just maybe not the right EQ move, but you get the idea. Okay, so that's the onboard equalizer, okay? And then finally, the last option is to use an outboard equalizer. So the way we do that is we just treat it like an insert, like we did the compressor. And so I will pick one of the EQs here, because you should technically be familiar with that. I mean, the only difference between that and the one that's we've used a lot on the APA is it has a second mid band. So I could ask you to use the 550B. I could ask you to use the 560. I could ask you to use these, which you already know how to use. This Neve is another option. So one thing about the Neve is that you first have to make sure all these are on, and then these can also turn off, so just be aware of that. So that has to be in, and it has to not be off there. But these bottom knobs are frequencies, okay? So low frequencies, mid, high. These are the frequency, and then this knob is booster cut. So right down there, the 0, that's all the way just unity. So if I go up that way, I'm cutting, I believe, and that way I'm boosting. So that's kind of the middle point on that. And then this inward connections, it has a Q, so it's kind of like a parametric, and you choose the frequency. So actually it has 2 parametrics and 1 up there. It's more like a Pultec style now that I look at it, but that one is probably the least one I'll choose because it's more of EQing the master bus. So, all right, so Braden, you want to choose one for me?
Sure. Why don't you just use the 550?
Okay. How about use the... Come on now. That's not...
Use 17.
Okay, use 17. That's a hard one, all right? Okay, so 17, there we go. Actually, and I'm probably do one with the graphic too, just because we haven't talked about that. So, snare drum again. I'm going to patch an insert like I did last time. So snare drum was 14. Insert send, and we're going to go to the Neve EQ there first. And then we're going to come back. Now remember, what do we need to do? We need to turn on the insert, right? So over here again, we're going to turn on insert. Pre-Q really doesn't matter since we're EQing it anyway, right? So just turn on the insert, make sure I have that button on. So let's go over the EQ, see if it's doing anything. We'll just twist some knobs and yeah. What? Yeah, it's doing something. Okay. So once again, we're probably going to hunt around in the mid-range. So I'm going to choose a frequency. I'm going to go ahead and boost that and choose a frequency. And again, I'm hearing the culprits kind of in this boxy area there. So I'm just going to cut that, maybe add a little high end. So I can either compare with and without there, or I can compare it with my insert over there. Okay, just for kicks, let's go ahead and do the 14, which is the graphic EQ, because we haven't really talked about the graphic EQ. So this is nice because it's kind of one fell swoop of just finding the frequency and finding what we don't like and just cutting it. That's fine with me, but maybe we'll cut a little bit there. Maybe we'll cut a little bit there. Maybe we'll add a little sizzle to it. So you get the idea there, okay? And actually, if I wanted more beef, something's not really working with this, is it? Seems like it's a little grungy. Alright, anyway, so you get the idea there. And honestly, I think that is the practical. Now, could you scroll back up to the top? Also, part of the time of the practical is going ahead and normalizing the console. So the next person can come in and take this because we're on a kind of a tight deadline. So make sure that's part of your time. And if you want to bring in a timer, you can do that. Otherwise, just go ahead and zero the console, and then I will put that patch back in for the next person. So I hope that was helpful for you guys. Have a Merry Christmas.